from Sports Illustrated and the MMQB, my longtime friend and former NFL Media Group colleague, none other than Albert Breer back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Albert?
I'm good, Rich. How you doing?
What's your biggest takeaway from Week 6 so far, right now?
It's tough because I feel like we had a couple exciting ones like Carolina, Minnesota, and New England, Dallas. I don't know if there was like a huge takeaway the way. You know what I would say? I would say like the big takeaway is that it's a long season. Because I think there are a couple teams that we saw early in the year, and I think we all got really excited about them. And now you're seeing them level off a little bit. And so, now I think you're seeing like the challenge for some of these teams that looked like they were headed in the right direction. So Carolina be one. I was bullish on them at 3-0. They've lost 3 in a row now, and Christian McCaffrey's hurt, so they're one. Cleveland, I think, is another obvious one. They're sitting there at 3-3. I don't think a few weeks ago any of us would have seen that. And then the Chargers really take it on the chin yesterday, going cross country and playing a really, really good Baltimore team. Coming off of. I think one of the biggest ones they've had in a couple of years in beating the Browns at home. And so I'd say that's probably like my biggest blanket takeaway is that, like a lot of the teams that we got excited about over the first month of the season have sort of leveled off a little bit. And, the other thing I think is pretty obvious. You look across the league, I think we have one undefeated team in the Cardinals, right? And then beyond that, how many one-loss teams are there left? Baltimore, Buffalo plays tonight. There aren't a lot of them, right?
Right.
So
you got the Cowboys, you got the Rams with one loss, and obviously the Buccaneers, just the one loss.
So it's that just feels like a relatively small number, right? 6 teams that are either 6-0 or 5-1. So I think just maybe sort of speaks to. I think maybe after 6 weeks we still haven't figured everything out, which is probably the way it is every year.
It should be, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Obviously our focus in the national media changes from week to week, day to day, and John Gruden was the story last week. Urban Meyer came up with his first career win as an NFL head coach. It happened in London in a game that the Jaguars came from behind a couple of times to win. So his job is now, are we just placing everything aside that the Khan family and Urban Meyer survived all of that and that the plan just remains the same? Is that the way it goes?
I just think, I honestly, Rich, I didn't buy that he was going to walk away at this point just because I think the two sides have too much invested in one another for it to be to come undone that quickly, right? And I know everything that happened, and obviously that Friday night in Columbus wasn't a good one for Urban, and the fallout from it, I don't think that was great either. But you just have to look at the level of investment the two sides had in one another, and that for the Khan family, it wasn't just hiring a coach; it was almost like you were hiring his program his way, and. They invested so much in the staff and changing the way they do sports science, training, and strength, and everything else. And they're building a $150 million practice facility because he asked them to. And so there's a massive investment from the Khan family to bring Urban Meyer in there. And then I think what people miss on Urban is that when he left Ohio State and Florida. He had achieved a high level of success in both those places. And so, at Florida was after 2 national titles, at Ohio State was after 1. He's never really left anywhere with his tail between his legs, and it's just, knowing a little bit about the guy, just I had a hard time reckoning with the idea that he would just walk away that way without having done anything, And so if he completely lost the locker room, that would be one thing. Because I do think that's something he's acutely aware of, and he knows that if he loses the locker room, he's got no chance. But I think absent that, I don't think he was going to walk away. And by the way, I also really don't think he's going back to college. And I think that, one thing people are missing the mark on that is just I don't think he wants to recruit anymore. I don't think he wants to do that part of the job anymore. So I think they've, to some degree, weathered the storm here. And, that doesn't mean he's going to be there in 2023. I don't know that. But I don't think that there's going to be this quick hook with the Khan family. in their handling of Urban over the course of this season at least.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. So we handled the Jacksonville side of the final London game of the year. The Dolphins, if it wasn't for an ill-timed Damian Harris Patriot fumble in week 1, the Dolphins would be right next to the Lions in the winless department right now, Albert. So Tua had 300 yards passing, but another loss for the Dolphins, and the trade deadline is right around the corner. Are you hearing anything on the Deshaun Watson front at all right now, and what the Dolphins might be thinking on that subject?
Right now, I'm not, but I know that they've monitored it, and I think it's obvious that that's something that would have to rise to the ownership level, because of the sensitivity of it. My guess, Rich, would be that there's going to be exploratory phone calls, one way or the other. Between the 4 teams that we've talked about, the Eagles, the Dolphins, the Panthers, and the Broncos, and then the Texans, whether it happens from one side or the other before the November 2nd trade deadline. I don't think Nick Caserio is budging much in wanting to get his price. And, understanding that a lot of how his time in Houston sets up is going to be framed by what happens with Deshaun Watson and what he's able to get back for Deshaun Watson. And I'm not sure any of these teams are willing to pay full price right now. So, I think the likelihood is that the Dolphins finish the season with Tua. To me, what's so interesting about it is, you look at the progress that Brian Flores and Chris Greer made over their first 2 years, and now they're taking a step back. And what to me is worse than the step back, and the stuff that you really have to pay attention to, is all these guys they had, all these picks they've had, right? And they tore the thing down, right? They tore the thing down, and we're going to build it back up with all of these draft picks. Well, they drafted a left tackle out of USC, Austin Jackson, right? Now he's playing guard. He moved over to guard. They got their second-round pick from this year, Liam Eichenberg, playing left tackle. They drafted a corner out of Auburn last year in the first round. He's not playing much. They draft Tua, and Tua's been okay, but they drafted him in front of Justin Herbert, which really could leave a mark long-term on the franchise. And so you look at that, and then you look at the players they traded away, and it's Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's become an all-pro in Pittsburgh, and it's Laramie Tunsil, who may be the best left tackle in the league for Houston. And so, if I'm, Dolphins ownership, that's sort of how I'm analyzing all of this and how I'm looking at all of this. And I'm saying, where we were 2 years ago, where we were 3 years ago, we're better off now. And have they taken all this capital they picked up? Because they did a great job of just basically accumulating capital. And have they turned it into a bunch of good football players? And I think that's sort of how Brian Flores and Chris Greer are going to be evaluated going forward. And the one thing that could change the dynamic altogether, and make maybe some good players look great, is bringing an elite quarterback in there. So I don't think anybody's in the hot seat yet or anything like that. But if you come out of this year and you're Brian Flores and Chris Greer, and you think Tua is just okay, and you're going into year 4, and you're probably not going to get a year 5 if you don't make the playoffs in year 4, maybe that's where you make the move and you try to strike with a move for either a Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers or somebody like that.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. The Zach Ertz acquisition by Arizona caused me to just point out, well, look at the fast dismantling of the Eagles championship team and how you need to win now and look around the room and know that this is a moment in time that you're probably not going to get back. That's what the NFL is all about. And so the question is Arizona, is this their time? I mean, what a win by them yesterday without their head coach and play caller. I know you wrote about it. Is this the Cardinals' moment in time, Albert? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in a nice window now. And, they're sort of where, to me, it's like that rookie contract window with a guy who's really emerging as a franchise quarterback, where you're getting franchise quarterback level of play from a guy, and you're paying him, like he's, still a young player. And that's where the Chiefs were with Mahomes, and that's where the Rams were early on with Goff when they were able to spend and be really aggressive. That's where the Eagles were with Carson Wentz, when they went to the Super Bowl. I know he didn't play, but, that's where they were, just from a team-building standpoint. So the Cardinals are in that window now, and it's part of why they've been able to be aggressive in bringing veteran players in. And just talking to like Vance Joseph and texting back and forth with Cliff a little last night. It was kind of like I went back to like conversations I had with all those guys in the summer about how they really felt like they were close last year. And, one of the things that Cliff has sort of brought up over and over again is how, 7 wins last year might have been 10 or 11 if the team was better situationally and played smarter and was, kind of handled itself in winning situations better. And that was why they went out and they got J.J. Watt and Rodney Hudson and Colt McCoy and A.J. Green and all these guys who, are mature players who've been in the league for a long time, who played for playoff teams. And so, I think that really showed up for those guys over the weekend where, just sort of like, all hell breaking loose and just a weird situation where you're going, and playing on the other side of the country and you're 5-0 and you're playing against a really good team that's, coming off of a loss. And, it's maybe the spot where you stub your toe. And, I think you could argue the Cardinals instead came through with the best performance of the season. I think for all those guys, it was really a point of pride just because absent the head coach, absent the quarterback's coach, absent Chandler Jones, who you could argue is maybe their best player, they were able to go in there and the players were able to kind of take ownership of the team again. And I think you saw like a real sign of the maturity of the group, which, it has to make guys like Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim feel really good to see that, the thing that they really look to shore up in the offseason is coming through for them.
Albert Breer here, a few more minutes left with the scribe of the MMQB, Sports Illustrated, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So much attention being paid to the hot mic picked up of Aaron Rodgers letting the Soldier Field fans know, or one particular is flipping him the double bird, know that he still owns them.
Yeah.
But the soundbite that I heard that I kind of picked up on was when he was asked about this potentially being his last game at Soldier Field. He said he didn't think so. He kind of said that, that it wasn't maybe his last game at Soldier Field, which caused me to say, like, do the Broncos play the NFC North next year?
Exactly.
Or could this five-game win streak, right? Yeah, the Steelers play the NFC North next year. I'm like, so my question is like, is this 5-game win streak showing what everybody thought, which is like this is the best marriage, and the Packers should just ditch whatever beyond the steering wheel plan that they were hatching in the 2020 draft and planning to turn to at some point? Just screw it. Like, look. Yeah. Are we there? Do you think we're there?
You know what, Rich? Like, it's funny you say that because I hadn't seen that particular soundbite, but I actually like sort of the correlation that, like, what kind of like came up in what popped in my head when I saw the video the first time of him, kind of like shouting in the end zone. It was almost like, it's weird. It's like almost like a school pride there. You know what I mean? I don't know the right word to, like, I don't know the right term to describe it, but almost like kind of like this is a rival. This is a huge rivalry, and I own you. You know what I mean? Like, and it was more than just a player. To me, like, it kind of came off as more than just Aaron Rodgers saying, I always come in here and kick your ass. It's like, we own you. You know what I mean? Like, and it's sort of like, my read on it was like, and you could see the way his teammates were right there with him. And it just, if I'm a Packer fan, I'm looking at that and I like, wait a second, like, that does not look like the guy who was aloof and they couldn't find him, over the course of the off season, and he's off in Hawaii and, living the life of a celebrity. Like, that's a guy who looks like he's pretty engaged in like Packers business, right? And Packers business is that rivalry. So, I think there's no question. It's I think there's no question. Like, you have to feel good about that. And it was something like me and you talked about, I think, in July. Like, maybe there's part of him that's like looking at this and saying to himself, you know what, this isn't so bad. We've lost all these guys to injury, and we've still got good players out there, and I'm having another year that looks like it's going to be a career year. And, like, I don't know. Maybe there's just that part of it where, like, he went through confronting exiting the place, and now he's back in the place, and it's maybe caused him to look around a little bit more intently and see that for all its flaws, maybe there are a lot of things that are right about the place. You know what I'm saying?
That's the way it looks like to me right now, Albert. They've won 5 in a row. And we could go.
He's playing great.
We can go back and forth as to which team is the best. I opened the show by saying Cowboys haters, the sooner they realize the Cowboys are fielding a Super Bowl contending team, the better. Obviously, the Bucs are your defending champs, and Brady's playing as well as he's ever played. The Rams kept pace with Arizona. That's your NFC right now. The Packers have a shot to win this thing just like anybody else. Certainly the Bills tonight. We could go on and on. But to me, it just shows, again, Cobb is playing well, and that was his maneuvering, his button push right there. And again, the exact quote was, I don't know if this is my last one.
Referring to Soldier Field. I hate to jump in there, Rich, but I think Matt LaFleur deserves credit.
Another one, too, because he's got it's not like the two of them are learning each other's system. Now, this is year 3 after 2 13-win seasons. Like, it's kind of set up for him. It's the way it kind of looks like.
It's funny, like, when I've talked to Matt in the past about this, like, we always laugh about, like, how, like, the question at first was, like, whether or not, like, the system was going to work for him and, like, were they going to butt heads and where was their relationship? And, I mean, as it turns out, the weird thing is like, that's the one relationship that was, like, holding this thing together, in the summer. Like, that was the one relationship that was really making this work. And I think Matt did a great job of navigating, his relationships, of course, with the people in the front office and the people who, the people who are signing his checks, with the, relationship he has. It's the most important relationship that he'll have in his job, which is his relationship with his quarterback. And so I think Matt's done an incredible job, really kind of navigating that. And even like you bring up Randall Cobb, which I think is such an interesting key. It's like a lot of coaches might have like looked at that and said, well, like that guy's washed up and like, I don't like this was forced on me. And no, I mean, like Matt, like, viewed it as like, okay, like this guy makes, you're comfortable throwing to this guy and let's see what he has left. And they've gotten a lot out of him. You know what I mean? Like, so like even something like that, like where it's like, I think some coaches, maybe their natural instinct would be to kind of push back on a player forcing an acquisition like that. Matt's all in on it. And Matt's, saying like, no, bring him on and we'll find a way to use him. And if he makes you more comfortable, then we'll get him out there. And so I think like part of that is like a lot of like what Aaron was looking for was like the quote unquote partnership. Right. And I think in subtle ways, maybe he's getting some of those things now in Green Bay. And again, I think that's a great credit to the job Matt LaFleur has done. I mean, to me, you always hear that term like emotional intelligence. Like I think Matt's shown a lot of that in his handling of the situation.
Yeah, the quote was, I don't think this is my last one, but I've enjoyed every single one of them, which is also my way of saying goodbye to you, Albert. And this is not your last one. I've enjoyed every single time you've been on the show. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, Rich. And I always enjoy coming on.
Okay, Albert. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. That's Albert Breer, the MMQB. Check it all out, the senior NFL reporter. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.